and welcome to the Creatives Get Real podcast. We're so glad you're here and you're joining us today. I'm Roben-Marie Smith.
And I'm Sandi Keene, and we're two artists hanging out, having some conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And we're glad you're here too.
Yes, we are glad you're listening. If you are a new listener, then you can be sure to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. And if you're a longtime listener and you've been with us forever, we are so grateful. So Welcome.
Yes. So we have a fun topic today.
Mm-hmm.
I say that every time, but it's true. We're each going to take a new to us supply or technique that we're using that we're really excited about and share it.
Yes.
So what have you chosen?
Okay, I have chosen soft pastels. Now, they're not necessarily new to me, but over the course of the last almost 100 days during the 100-day project, I decided to get them out and kind of re-look at them again and see if I could fall in love with them. You ever have an art supply that you just think, I just don't like this. Can I fall in love with this? Is there a way for me to love this? And I did. I had been working on the 100-day project doing a variety of papers with watercolor, and I was using pencils and pastels came into the mix, and I thought, I really don't know if I'm going to like these because I don't like the dry, flaky powder on my hands. That was the one thing that kept me from really loving pastels back in the day. And so I started thinking, maybe there's a way I could use these where I'll like them. And you know how things happen. Sometimes you just start experimenting and you start playing. And then you think, well, what happens if I do this? Or what happens if I do that? And so I started adding water to them and love the results. It's a lot like a watercolor, but different. It's more textured. The look is different. The way it flows is different. And each pastel is very different as well. Some are really, really soft, and then others are a little bit more firm. So you kind of have to play with them to kind of see what works. But absolutely, completely fell in love with them again. Like, could not get enough of playing with the pastels. And yeah, so even though it's not a new art supply, it's something that I've just fell in love with. And getting questions from people is like, wait a minute. You can do what? You can mix pastels with water? I didn't know you could do that. And it's like, well, I didn't either until I tried it and said, what could happen? And not only brushing or rubbing the pastels on your paper, but you can actually take the water brush and add water to the brush and pull the color right off of the pastel. We talked about that. And so many different ways of dipping it. I've dipped it in the water and then applied it on the paper, just different ways of exploring. So when you get these little chunks that fall off and get flaky, don't swipe those over into the trash. Those are precious. You can add water to them and put them right on your paper. So a blending of the pastels with watercolor and pencils, and I love charcoal pencils kind of mixed with it, has been something I have really enjoyed playing with. And I have been buying more and experimenting with different brands to see which ones I really like. And it's been awesome. It's so fun when you realize that there's, you think, well, I've kind of played with everything. I don't know that there's anything else out there that I could really enjoy. And then you find something and you're like, wow, okay, this is awesome. I'm loving this. Yeah.
Good.
So so soft pastels.
So let me ask you a few questions in case there are people, because I'm relatively new to pastels myself. I started seeing them on Instagram and not really knowing what they were. So let's go back to the beginning of describe what a soft pastel looks like, where you find them, and how you store them. I think those are three good questions.
Okay. Think of a soft pastel, think chalk. Think of a very fine chalk. That's about the best visual way I can describe them.
I describe it as like fancy sidewalk chalk.
Yeah. And some of them are firm and hard enough that they look like small pieces of chalk that you would have written on a chalkboard with. So they do come in that. The ones that I really like, the way that I describe them is they're like a Cheeto. They're like a fat Cheeto where they're kind of like, they got a little bit more of a like texture in it where you can kind of see these little holes, and it's more porous is the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
And so then I'm able to, brush them on or rub them onto the paper, and they just melt into the paper. So, how do you describe it? And then there's some that are more like a stick. They're longer. Some have wrapped paper around them, and some of them are just, regular, just what they look like in their shapes. And there's different shapes too. There's some that look like erasers, where they're a little chunky and they kind of look like erasers. So, okay, so you asked me to describe them sort of. Again, there's like really soft, and then there's the ones that are more firm, where they're more like a real piece of chalkboard chalk. So.
Right.
So your other question after what they look like and describing them is where you get them. Was that the other question?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I asked how to store them.
Oh, yeah, storing. Okay.
I just wanted to throw in that when I first saw them, I was like, what are those beautiful things that everyone has in these gorgeous bowls? What is that? And do I have to use it, or can I just look at them?
Well, I'll start with storing them, because I don't really like to store them as much as I like to have them in either little bowls or little flat, like trinket dishes are perfect for them. And they do kind of get flaky. So it depends on how you like your art supplies to be stored. If you want them to be pristine, then I recommend putting them back in the packaging. And most of them will come packaged in sort of like a foam, where they're placed into the foam, and they really are shipped that way primarily because they can break very easily, and the softer ones break more easily than others. And then they'll get flaky and powdery. So package them that way. That foam sort of takes in and absorbs the stress and the powder.
It cushions them.
Yeah. So I don't really store them back in there, because I want to see them, and I want to be able to access them whenever I want. And so my colors, sometimes they'll rub off on one, will rub off on another, but I don't really care. So you can do that, like little bowls or little dishes. They're not really tall enough unless you get the tall ones to put in mugs or, little tall things. Having them laid out is really a better plan. And I really like doing that as well, because they do flake and they do sometimes break and chip. And so having them in a bowl or a plate or something is actually a really good idea. So, plus they're just so pretty to look at anyway.
They're gorgeous.
Yeah. And so where to get them? Various places. They're not as easily found in a Michael's or a craft store or an art store.
Right.
So online
you won't
is
find them
really the way to go, because there's so many different brands. There's higher end brands. There's, you just have to experiment and see what you like. And I have found different brands I've been testing. In fact, I got a new box today of another brand I'm going to try.
Ooh.
So excited. Yes. I'm like, and so I'll report on that later.
Yes.
And so it's figuring out, I know that I really like the really, really soft ones. And so I know that those are the ones that I'm going to grab and use the most. So, and, but I would say definitely Amazon. Dick Blick has a wonderful variety of.
That's where I got mine.
Yeah. And I know you like Cheap Joe's, but I don't know. I haven't looked to see what they have.
I bought some in a store, a Cheap Joe's store.
Awesome. Yeah.
So they do carry several brands. So yes, Cheap Joe's.
Okay. So if you have one of those that you can actually physically go to, if you can do that now, then you can test them out. You can see them in person. Obviously, is always better if you can. But they've been pretty true to color, the ones that I've ordered. So yeah,
me too. Yeah, they're definitely gorgeous. And I think we have to be responsible. We have to say that we are mixed media artists, and we are using pastels in a very unconventional way.
I say non-traditional, because this is not the way, because I've been getting a lot of questions, and I'm like, okay, just know that if you're a pastel artist, I can't answer a question about the way that true pastel artists are using these. I mean, they don't mix them with water. They would never
wet them.
No.
Never.
And they're using special paper, and I don't. I'm also asked the question about sealing them. Now, I say sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. When they're mixed with water, they don't behave the same way and they don't dry the same way. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
a binder, but I
Yep.
will test. And if I feel like it needs a spritz of a pastel fixative, or you can even use a cheap hairspray, I will do that. But
Mm-hmm.
the questions I've been getting have been a lot of, well, doesn't that all rub off? And it's like, think non-traditional. It's not being
Mm-hmm.
used the same way. And then I also like to use a clear gesso and a white gesso in my layering. And so that even, kind of acts as a binder as well. So
yeah, that helps grab it.
yes.
Yeah.
So combining that. So that's a question I'm asked a lot as well. So thought I'd throw that in there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. We just want to
Mhm.
say that,
Yes.
yeah, there's some wonderful pastel artists out there, and they would probably cry to see us adding water to a pastel,
Mm-hmm.
but it works beautifully.
Yes. Uh-huh. So, don't be afraid to experiment and say, what if I do this, so
Right.
yeah. Yeah. So what is your art supply? Tell us.
Well, I loved yours because it's something that I'm playing with as well. Mine is stencils.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I used to use stencils when I first started in mixed media and loved them. And then for some reason, they just fell out of my favor.
Yeah.
It was like, I thought I didn't need stencils anymore because, if I need a flower, I'll just paint a flower. I don't need one.
Right.
Yeah, silly girl. I also thought I did need a sewing machine. So that's what my advice is worth.
There you go.
Never listen to my
funny.
art supply advice when I'm saying no. Yeah. But I have recently rediscovered stencils. In fact, I just taught a class on stencils because we have experimented and played with stencils in a new, creative, wildly imaginative way that kind of turned my definition of what a stencil is and can do on its ear.
Mm-hmm.
And that is using stencils in pieces, in parts, combining stencils, using stencils on unusual papers to create all kinds of different things, and making full art pieces that are only from stencils. And if someone saw it, they would not guess that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
They
what
would
I've seen you doing is amazing. But tell us, though, that not all stencils are created equal. They're not all really suited. And the new line that you've been using, tell us about that and how amazing they are and how suited they are for this new vision for using stencils.
Right. Well, I'm using Ray Missigman. She's my good friend and partner in pop-up art classes. So we teach together, and she came out with a new line of botanical stencils, and they are so versatile. She sent me her stencils to use, and there were all these leaves, and I would hold this up and I would say, "This is a leaf?" And she would say, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Then why do I see a flower?" And she'd be like, "You see a flower? I see a leaf." So I started painting with them, and all of her leaves, they would look like flowers to me. So I turned them into flowers. If you paint a leaf shape in a flower color, you paint it pink instead of green, you're like, "Oh, I see the flower."
Right.
So we just really experimented and found ways to combine them, to turn them upside down, to use them in one direction, then turn it over, use it in the other direction, combine those petals and those leaves, and made them into just gorgeous, gorgeous botanicals. And like my head exploded when I finally understood this. When you think of a stencil, you think that you pounce acrylic paint through it, and you have a perfect carbon copy. It looks exactly like the stencil. At least that's what I always thought. And even though I used stencils in pieces and did some combining, I didn't do it to the breadth and depth that I do now, and understand that this tiny little loop that you love on the edge of this leaf, you can use that as a mark and just use that one tiny bit of the stencil. Or if there's a part of the stencil that you don't like, leave that off and paint your own whatever you want there.
Right. So rather than it being more of the traditional way that we've thought of using stencils, working with the jelly plate, using them as more like a background element, just sort of like in the pattern of what we were doing.
Right.
You are now using these stencils in a way that you're literally creating this work of art that is done and created and built on with the stencils themselves. And it's really beautiful. There was one you posted, I don't remember how many days ago it was. And it was like, it's just like I stopped in the scroll going, wow. I mean, it did not look like stencils at all. It looked like you had hand done them. Beautiful work. So how cool to take it, a supply that, we've all probably used at least once or twice, right? But then to be like, all right, how can we use this in a different way and look at it differently? So that's amazing.
Yeah. And it really has opened up my eyes to possibilities, not just with stencils, but I think it's kind of like the pastels.
Mm-hmm.
You think that this is the traditional way that you use a pastel, and this is what a pastel can do. It's like, this is what a stencil can do. Not necessarily.
Right.
You can play with it, experiment, and find these new ways to use our supplies that just open up a new world for you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So the whole thought of, I've really pretty much discovered and done everything, so there's really nothing left, is not true. Get those supplies out and take a look and start thinking out of the box and be like, yeah.
And look at things that you've put away because you don't think you don't like them anymore. You've outgrown them. You've whatever. Look at them. Give them a new look. See what other people are doing, and let that inspire you. Like, oh, I had no idea that you could mix water with pastels and you have like a chalky watercolor, or all those kind of things. Watch what other people are doing and be inspired because it's amazing.
Yeah.
And doesn't it reinvigorate us as artists?
Oh, yeah.
It's so exciting to find something new. You're like, oh, look what I found.
Yeah. And the cool thing too is you probably already have it. So, I had pastels. I just didn't have a lot of them. And I certainly didn't branch out into other, and now, wow, what a world it's opened up. And even for you, it's like, okay, you have stencils. I mean, this new line that Ray's done is beautiful, but you have other stencils that are packed away.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, what can I do with 10 years? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I have a drawer of them I haven't touched in I don't know how long. So, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us right now, like what are your 2 or 3 favorite brands of pastels?
Okay. By far, Diane Townsend is my absolute favorite, but it is the most expensive one I've used. It's like almost $5 for one. Yeah. But you can get them in sets and they are just divine. Now I'm not recommending anybody go out and spend that kind of money unless you really want to invest. If you can get one and test it, then definitely try it out. The other one, this new one I just got, I haven't tested. I can't remember how to pronounce the name of it. So, Unison is another really good one, but it's a little bit more of a higher end. And then I just got some Rembrandt is another brand I just tried. And they're the ones that are more like, a chalkboard chalk. They're very kind of rounded and more solid, more stick. And, they're nice. They're softer than they look. Cause when I got them, I thought, oh, these are going to be like really, hard. They're not going to be as soft, and they're nice. They're not as hard as I thought they were going to be. And so, and again, I can't remember the brand name of the one I just got today, but I'm really anxious to try those out and just kind of test. And there's a whole bunch of other, I forgot. The other one would be second to Diane Townsend is the Senelays. Oh my goodness. I
have some of those too.
Dreamy. Yeah. But I've only been able to find them in half sticks. So if I get the half stick set and I find a color I really like, I haven't been able to find them individual. So
Cheap Joe's.
Do they have them there? Oh.
Yeah, I bought them separately, single sticks. At Cheap Joe's.
All right, because I have a few favorite colors that I've picked out of the half stick box I got, and then I bought the jumbo of the black and the white because I was going through too many of the black and whites, especially the black. I use the black a lot. So Yeah.
Sure.
So yeah. So those would be, my favorite so far. But that could change as I experiment with others.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And the stencils I was talking about are by Roben-Marie Smith. It's the ATC Botanicals collection, and they're available at Stencil Girl Products.
Awesome. And we'll put all of the links in the show notes so you guys will have access to them as well.
Right.
Well, that was fun. I like talking about art supplies.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, guys, if you have any questions for us at all about the stencils or about the pastels, please let us know and reach out. We love to answer your questions. We encourage you, dig into your stash and see what you have and get something out that you can say, I mean, think about tags. We haven't really used tags a lot. I think it kind of ebbs and flows, you get this all of a sudden. And then, so what could you do with those? Get creative. And if you're feeling like you're in a block, then maybe that's what you can do to kind of jump out of that and get out of that.
Sounds good. Good advice.
See you next week.
Sounds great.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creatives Get Real. We love hearing from you, so hop on over to Instagram and leave us a comment. And we also appreciate reviews on iTunes.
And you can find me, Sandi Keene, at sandykeene.com and my classes at popupartclasses.com.
And you can find me, Roben-Marie Smith, at robenmarie.com. And if you're looking for and need tech support, check out my membership site, makerstechu.com.